I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
My name is Albert B. Kimel III. I'm 77 years old, and I had 34 and a half years service with the Greensboro Fire Department, and I go by AB. And I was a battalion chief when I retired in 1999. Yes, I'm from Greensboro. I was born in Greensboro, raised, educated here. Been here all my life. The driving force that got me to join the fire department, you're gonna like this. My dad called me one day, and he said, "Son," he said, "would you like to go to work with the fire department?" And believe it or not, at that time I said, "Well, what do they do?" We started laughing, and so he told me, he says, "Well, if you want a job at the fire department, go see the chief on your lunch hour today." And so I did, and Chief Moonwire was the chief at that time. And back in, he did the hiring and firing. It didn't go through human resource or any other department of the city. So I interviewed with him at lunch, and I can't say what he actually told me on film, but it was funny at the time. But he knew my father for a long time. And he kind of commented, "Well, you won't stay long, you'll go to work with a telephone company." So he told me to go back and get my notice, and 2 weeks later I started work at the fire department. And 34 and a half years later I retired. At that time, no. The only thing that I had to do was just fill out some paperwork there with Miss Fay. My starting salary was $336 a month. We did have training, but at that time they hired you and you rode the trucks until they could hire enough people to put on a class. So I rode Engine 1 for about 6 months before I went in training. And at that time, I don't remember how many people were in training, but I know Woody Parrish was in there, and Butch Burchett, and gosh, there was others. Phil Cole was on Engine 1 also. He was a rookie, but he's no longer with the fire department. He retired or quit. I enjoyed training, and I think the high moments was you still had a job on Saturday afternoon. Because back when we was in training, it was 5 days training and a half a day on Saturday, and that was cut day and cleanup day, and we would do yard work around the training center and everything. And if they didn't come out and ask for you to come in the office, you knew you had a job Monday.
Anyway,
yeah, we had good times in training, and the weekends we would have some get-togethers with everybody and their family and got to know them, and that was a high time, getting to know the families of the people you worked with. And so I feel like, you know, that was high times. Our training officers, I believe back then, was Chief Powell and Chief Kent. My first station assignment, like I said, when I come on, was Engine 1 at Headquarters Station. And there were 6 of us on the truck at that time. We had 4 companies there at headquarters, and one engine would have 6 people assigned, the other one would have 5, and then one of the trucks would have 6, and then the other truck would have 5. So it was, you know, 20-some people there on duty. if I recollect, my first captain was Captain Harry Brown. And matter of fact, go ahead and see Arnold Marion was the driver at the time. And I had, like I said earlier, Phil Coble was a rookie, Bobby Shane, and Tommy Morrison. That was the crew. Well, as far as pranks and jokes and stuff like that, you know, when you got a lot of people together that works together and get along, there was always some pranksters. And I know the Phantom was the big thing when I went on, and I would miss stuff, and they say, the Phantom got it. And, you know, after a while, you kind of got disgusted, but you never got mad because that wouldn't let the Phantom off of you. And finally, you had to write a letter to the Phantom and post it in the kitchen. You know, how much I love you, and, you know, I sure want to get along and all of that. And that finally gets the Phantom off of you. But the Phantom, as it turned out to be, I won't mention their names, but they would go to a lot of trouble to pull a prank. I watched them take lockers loose upstairs just to take something out of it. And because people would say, well, that's my lock and nobody can get in it. Well, the Phantom could get in anything. Yes, the union started after I went on. Matter of fact, Chief Frank Jones was the first union president, and it got started up. I did participate for a while, and then due to family and personal reasons, I had to drop out of it. And so when it started back again, I was at the rank that I could not belong. Yes, back then, as far as cooking and the crew eating together, we did, because we did not leave the station unless it was for training. And the only way, and you brought your own food, of course, we know that we bought our own food and brought it in, and each one would rotate around cooking. And so we cooked a lot more than what I understand they do, you know, in the present time. Not at first, but after a while, as far as going to the store, then one person could go, and he had the option that they would let him go on duty, or he would go get it the day before and bring it in. Oh, to eat, it would cost us $1 a day, and back then that was about $25 to buy 2 meals home, and your lunch was usually something non-meatable, you know, mostly vegetables, might have Spam, and then at night you'd have your meat and dessert and other stuff. I cooked. Well, my favorite dish, kind of varied, but I always liked pinto bean slaw and cornbread and fried Spam. Sometimes at night we'd have, you know, fried chicken or steak or roast, and just whatever the person wanted to cook. Well, eating together, I mean, it's like family. And you were like, at that time, you was like brothers. Now we have females, and you're like brothers and sisters, you know, before I retired. But you get to know each other, you're relaxed. You can talk about different things, talk about family, trips, whatever. And that's essential, you know. Bringing your own and eating by yourself, some of that happened, but I don't see that as firehouse living. Oh, when the females started, it was a challenge. I know there was some disappointment in several of the officers. Back then, officers had their own quarters, and some of them had to give their living space up, and that set bad. But overall, I really had no problem, and I was the first fire captain to have a female assigned to their shift. And the reason I say the first, Kay Pierman came out of training at 5 o'clock that afternoon, and at 6 o'clock she reported for duty at Station 8. So, and I think you were at Station 8. You come to Station 8 at one time, and Shoemate was there. And I don't know whether, you know, the female was there, but he had Deanne Clapp on his shift, and I got Kay, and she started at 6 o'clock, and then Deanne come in the next morning at 8. Yeah, I think everybody needs a little privacy, whether it's a 6-foot wall built up with cinder blocks. I don't necessarily see the private room in the dormitory area because you're definitely cutting off your camaraderie with everybody, where if you land in your bed where it's the walls, you can still holler at someone. But I think everybody needs a little privacy. Retired firefighter visits at the station, he may not know anybody, but yet he still wants to stay connected. I think it's essential, that they treat him just like you would have treated a citizen. And not only that, he could pick up a little knowledge or a little information from the past and how things were done and compared to what he does today. And so it's a give and take. And I hope, I don't visit a lot of fire stations right now, but I hope any retired firefighter would visit one, would have that opportunity to talk to them, and they would spend time with them. As far as active companies today, I know the station is close to me. There's a couple of them, maybe 3 there, that was on the department when I was working, and when they come out in the territory or in the neighborhood, they stop by, and I think that's great. First call was out of headquarters station, Engine 1, and we responded to Battleground and Northwood. There used to be an old house that sat there, and it was a kitchen fire. When I went on and signed the Engine 1, like I said, we had 6 people. 4 of us rode the tailboard, if all of us was there. Back then they had Kelly days. So usually, maybe once every 6 days, we were all there. So that was at least 4 on the tailboard. And you stood back there and you helped on with the bar above your head. As far as turnout gear, I've crossed the square going through town many times trying to get my coat on.
Well,
when the driver and the officer got on, they was ready to go, so you better get on. And it was crowded. It was crowded. Well, back in when we had the trucks with open cabs, and at that time they were all open cab, we had no jump seats on the one that I was assigned to. The weather was miserable. It's like riding a motorcycle in a rainstorm. That's exactly what riding the back of that fire truck was. And just because you was the driver or the captain, you got wet also. So when we got to the fire, we were wet to start with. It was miserable, cold in the wintertime. When I first come on, as far as medical calls, about the only thing I remember, we rode wrecks, if there were wrecks. Of course, back in Greensboro, the department had 2 rescue squads. And one was at headquarters station and one at 5, and that covered the whole county, including in the city. But wrecks we rode on. As far as medical calls, no. The only time I can remember I did it once, maybe twice. The funeral homes back in had the ambulance service. And if they were shorthanded, they would call headquarters station and say, we need a rider. So they'd holler somebody out, get out front and ride the ambulance. Our medical, if I remember correctly, our medical response started, we started training in '78, and the QRVs went in service in November of 1978. And that's when we started riding medical calls. The value of riding medical calls, the fire department, 9 out of 10 times will get there faster than EMS. And our guys are certified, and they were back in. It was a long training to get state certified, as you know. And probably, along with you, myself, and 27 others were the first ones to be assigned to the QRVs. Well, as far as 9/11, I was retired at the time, but it still affected me because I feel like they're my brothers, and it could have been us. And it was a bad situation at the time, and we're still getting over it. Anytime you lose life, it's bad. And being a firefighter and seeing firefighters killed or even police officers killed in the line of duty, it bothers you because you've been there. And people just don't understand the pain that, concern that's there. And,
while we're there on that, how do you think?
well, firefighters dealing with death, I'll have to say firefighters, in my opinion, are unique. They've got to be to do the job that they do. As you heard the old joke before, most people run out of burning houses, firefighters run in. But death affects them all differently, I would say. You don't ever get used to it, but you get where you can handle it better than you used to. I think after your first one, and that really hits home, I just, I can only say that in my case, I deal with it in a way that maybe I'm not open at the time and talking about it, but I think about it, and it's really hard for me to, maybe anybody else, to put in words how you really feel and deal with death. I know in the department, and I was there a long time before I run across, or before we had a first fatality. And thank goodness, I wish I was there my whole career and never had a fatality, but it doesn't work that way. And it seems like sometimes when it starts, then it's bam, bam, bam. You got 3 or 4 in a row, and then it drops off. Larry, I think the one, as far as what stands out, and I remember today as clear as it was that day, dealing with children. Adults, I think they pass and you get over it. But children, to me, I don't get over that because I can still see in my mind that kid laying there, or that drowned victim laying there, that was a child and didn't know any better because they were so young, and it was because they just, maybe their parents got busy and forgot about them and they got out of sight. But that's just like on the death of a firefighter, that's like family. I'm was fortunate enough, Raymond, Raymond, but Jesse Gray was on my shift at headquarters station whenever that accident happened, and that really hits home. As far as with Raymond, what happened to him, sort of in the line of duty, but not in the line of duty, but he's still just as close because it's a brother, and I think that's how that affects. My proudest moment, personally, I guess, when I passed the captain's exam and finished number 1, that was accomplished because I was just lucky I was tickled to death to pass the exam. That and, the filling back in, I think a lot of them, boy, if I could just make captain on the fire department, that's really all I'd like, because Greensboro was well respected. And then when you make battalion chief, then that's just icing on what you've done, and that's a proud moment. And but just coming to work was a proud moment. I enjoyed every day at work. I would do it over again, but I think the only thing I would change, I would get my college education. But I enjoyed it. Like I said, coming to work was a pleasure. You never knew what was going to take place that day. I guess as we made rank in the department, you got other responsibilities, and some days you didn't mind coming to work, but you didn't really want to because you knew what was coming up as far as personnel problems, and that was the toughest part, dealing with personnel and handling that. The roles of firefighter when I come on, like I said earlier, was different. You didn't leave the station unless you got a call. You wasn't involved in anything. Today, the guys are involved in special projects, community. I see that as a great plus. The special teams within the fire department is a plus because now they're reaching out to more people and probably than what we did at the time that we came up, being confined to the station. I served in the reserves. I was in the reserves from 1964 to 1970, I think it was. And after active duty, then I was here in Greensboro in the reserves. Yes, why in the military and how it helped, how to get along with people the best you can. Neatness, staying straight. I mean, it was an experience in being in active duty, and it fell right in with the fire department. I thought maybe there for a little while I was still in service in the fire department because some of the officers you work for back then were very strict. Well, I would consider a successful firefighter someone that applies. He likes the job. He's just not here to draw a paycheck. He wants to get involved, and he wants to look after his family as best he can. Getting back, I'm going to go back to training.
That's fine.
I'm going to ask this. The pompier. It's probably a lot of people in the department, they don't know what a pompier ladder is. And we trained with that. And it was a confidence builder to climb up the side of a building. But pompier was a single rung ladder with a hook. And you climb from window ledge to window ledge. And of course we'd have to climb the tower over the top and back down. And I don't even know if they still have them today or not. But, that was an experience. My health, you know, when you're working, you think you're in the best shape and everything, and you don't never complain or anything. But my health, I think, has been great. It has gotten better since I've retired. Keeping my, you know, you keep your weight down. I still kind of stay active, but really, I've got a few little tweaks, but other than that, I feel great. Well, I hope the GFD will remember me by, I did my job, I enjoyed my job, sometimes it was tough and it had to be done. And that maybe I set some examples in some way. One thing that I played a part in getting changed was responding to the county on fire, house fires and stuff. Had that to happen to me as a battalion chief. And we was responding to a call, and the captain on my truck that was answering called and told me it was in the county. And of course I asked him several times, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yes, sir, it's right across the street and it's out in the county." And I said, "Well, notify county fire," which they already was responding and I didn't know. But anyhow, I said, "We'll have our people to stand by at the limits, city limits, and if there's no life or anything involved, then we will stand by and let county handle it." And that raised us a little uproar. But at that time, the policy was you don't respond outside the city. If you do, you're on your own, and just all kinds of things could have happened. So I played a part in that. Well, I hope they remember me as a good dad and provider, and believe it or not, a little easygoing, and just like to meet people. Well, the advice that I would want to give a new firefighter starting out today is be dedicated, listen, learn, and always be there. Well, as far as a special message to everybody, I think the fire department, thank you to everyone, and thank the ones who are there today in the dedication that they give, and to my family, just that I love you and always remember. All of the retirees and everything, I think it's great because each one of us has got a story, and they all tie in together. And it can help younger people if they watch this, it might be part of training one day when rookies come in that, they sit down and they watch what the older guys have done and said, and they will find out it all ties in together. And it's really great. I can't wait to see the finished product myself. And I thank y'all for taking the time doing this.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.